With the DCU revving up for its big launch, we're here to shake things up with 4 characters that we think absolutely need to be on the big screen. From fan favorites to hidden gems, these characters could make or break the start of the DCU. So hit that subscribe button and get ready because our countdown is packed with surprises and insights that you won't want to miss. Now here we have collected, as I stated, 4 characters, 2 each, that we think absolutely got to come to the DCU, and we do have an agreed upon 1 character that's got to sit on the bench for a little bit. Not that we don't like him, but we got to give some other characters a chance to shine. So I'm going to start us off with my top pick, and that is going to be The Question. Now, I've always liked the character of The Question. As a kid, I just was confused. I'm like, what's going on with this guy? But as I've gotten older, seeing the character more, I do like the detective element he brings that is separate from Batman. Because Batman, of course, you got the gadgets, the ninja fighting, the cars, all that over-the-top stuff. The Question is always a little bit more subdued. He's kind of just a guy going on little side adventures, solving mysteries. He can fight a little bit. But I think that brings kind of a cool element for sort of like the pretty much everyday man in the DC world. He's not part of these like larger-than-life adventures all the time. But I think he can contribute some cool stuff. Personally, I think it'd be sweet to see maybe like a Max miniseries or something on The Question. Maybe he's investigating something, and then he could kind of pop up in some other adventures or cross paths with other characters. But I think he could be kind of more of that like Daredevil vibe in the DCU. Would be my take on it.
Yeah, I think that would be super cool to have, because that's always been my issue with DC movies and a little bit of DC comics in general, is that every conflict is a world-ending conflict. But The Question would really bring that down to like street level. We're gonna investigate something in this city that it's if this doesn't get solved, obviously we're not gonna like blow the world up, but it's still something that like needs to be solved. The folks on the street level still need the assistance from heroes too. So not every character needs to be Superman level powered, but then you get to see The Question, which I think is, I remember him mostly from the Justice League Unlimited show, and I thought they did a really good job with him there. So that's where I would love to see him get a live action, the attention that he deserves.
Yeah, I liked him in those roles too, and I think there's just a lot of potential for a character like The Question, and I think he's got kind of that fan favorite following, especially with like James Gunn. I think he usually likes to pick those characters that are a little more off the beaten path that fans want, and make them like make sense and work in that world. So I'm sure he's already on his radar, but if he's not attached to a project, we got to get working on that. Another one that I'd like to see is going to be Jonah Hex. Now, Jonah Hex, infamously, Dakota, has that awful movie they did with Josh Brolin, and I think it was 2010. Which really, did you see that one? Maybe you didn't. Maybe
I know I did, but I honestly couldn't tell you what happened with. I know Megan Fox was the big sell, but I don't remember anything about it.
Well, it was just kind of like generic, action, and like it was like set in the West, but it wasn't like a Western. I didn't feel so. My pitch with Jonah Hex would be full on Western. You're because I think what is cool about DC is they can do like all these different genres, and like you can make it work. Whereas Marvel is kind of basically like one genre where they're all kind of like action, adventure, comedy, little things. And those are fun, but I think Jonah Hex would be cool. Like, you can do a Western, and you're going to have those supernatural elements. You're going to build up that character. Maybe you could later do something like Justice League Unlimited. Remember where he kind of like, didn't they time travel or crossover or something like that? You could do that later if you want. Maybe there's like a modern descendant or something. I don't know if they've done stuff like that in the books, but that would make sense. But I think just doing that character could open the doors for a lot of more unique stories with a character that we really haven't seen much of.
Yeah, and I think that would be a cool way for DC to start off, where, and maybe they can do that because Marvel has laid the groundwork already. But like it's taken Marvel however many years to get to, like it's all been, like you said, just superhero movies, just change out the characters, but it's essentially the same thing. Where then with like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, they used a little bit more horror. They've kind of started adding a little bit more sitcom elements, and they've kind of made the MCU have its own different genres within it. But or with the DC movies or shows or whatever, you could start that right off the bat where, like you said, with Question, that's probably maybe a little bit more like gritty true crime type of feel to it. And then Jonah Hex, we can go straight to a Western. You've got your Superman for, your general superhero thing. So yeah, I think that would be really cool to see those different elements of the DC and then see how they can still tie together with like Justice League movies or things like that.
Yeah. So I'm sure we're going to see Jonah Hex eventually at some point in the DCU, but I'd like him to for sure get his dues. Who I think has got to sit out, and this might seem a little contradictory, and we agreed on this one, Dakota, is going to be Batman. Now, we already know they're working on The Brave and the Bold, which is supposed to be a new version of Batman with Damian Wayne and the Bat family, which I get why they want to do that. However, I really think you could do the DCU, at least at first, without Batman, because we've got the Robert Pattinson Batman, so I think that kind of gives people their Batman feel. We've talked before about whether you could do two Batmans, which I think it would be okay to kind of take Batman out, because Batman is everybody's favorite. Everybody loves Batman. I get it. But when he shows up, it's like, oh, there's Batman, and everyone wants to see Batman, right? So I think a good way to let these other characters shine would be to build this world a little bit, build up some of these other characters, and then when Batman comes in, I think that would be kind of cool, because he would then have that lens of like, I'm the outsider, which he is always usually in the books and stuff, coming into this super powered world, and like, how does he fit into that?
Yeah, and I think Batman is just one of those characters that it seems like has to be a part of, whether it's comics or TV shows or movies, you have to have Batman in it to sell it. So I think that would be something cool to see a director or whatever it is be able to create. It doesn't have to be the entire DC universe, but to at least start it off, give us, 5 years without Batman or more probably. But then, like you said, when he comes in, you're like, oh, I know this guy, and everybody knows him. So it's not like you need to do some big backstory build up to who Batman is. And like you said, he's always that outsider. Like if we're doing Justice League, I think of Batman as he's on the team, but he's also kind of one that's quick to be like, all right, peace out. I'm going back to Gotham. I don't need this. So I think that's where it would make sense to, like, he jumps in when he needs to, or when it makes sense, or, he teams up with the Question or whatever.
Right.
But it doesn't need to be right off the bat.
Well, it's almost like, it's like they're trying to, and I think they played with this dynamic a lot in the Justice League cartoon of, they're like, you need to be full-time here, and he's kind of like, I kind of got my own stuff, but you guys got this, so it's like that. And we haven't seen that in the movies really. I mean, I guess in the Snyder ones, he was just fighting Superman, and then like, okay, I'm going to assemble the Justice League, and which, like, I think you could flip that where they're almost trying to, like, hey, like, we could use you, and he's like, yeah, maybe call me when you need me, type thing. Like, that would be, I think that would be fun to see in a movie, and make sense. So
for sure. So my two, I'm going to start off with Captain Atom. So I don't know that there's any live action of him, like from whether it's Smallville or any of the other movies. Again, another one that I remember
might have
a
done.
lot.
I feel like they did everyone in Smallville, but I don't remember Captain Atom, but it's possible.
Another one that I remember from, or like I learned about during the Justice League Unlimited cartoon. And I think, he would be a cool hero, but he's also got that pull of being like that military man that maybe is being asked to do things for the military that he's like, this isn't really that hero thing, but he usually will side with the government, and then that's where like him and Superman will clash. So he could be that hero, but also that hero that fights heroes at some point. And then being able to see, like, I think if we were going to do this movie, we maybe see him as human going into then becoming Captain Atom. But I think that would be a cool character to follow on different teams. And like I said, clashing with heroes, clashing with the government that he's, always supported and whatever. I think that would be a cool little dynamic for what I think is a pretty cool character that I don't think I see enough of.
Right. Yeah, I like that idea of that conflict where Superman could be like the other side of that, who's like,
Mhm.
we got to remain above or outside of these political governmental structures.
Mhm.
And then I think visually you get a lot of cool stuff with like his
Oh yeah.
fight scenes and the energy. And I mean, in the books, it always looks sweet when he's going to town with those battles. And then he does
Right.
that thing. I remember it was in Kingdom Come and what was that one? Public Enemies, right? Where it's almost like his like quantum energy can like connect. Just isn't he like time trap or like he gets sucked through time or
Oh,
some like they just kind of
yeah.
you could start playing with the like quantum energy
Yeah.
and I think you could do some interesting things from there if you like start building on
Yeah.
how
I
he's
was gonna say, it
connected.
usually seems like he usually gets like his suit gets punctured or something, and he's got to
Right.
like fly up before he explodes.
Ah!
Um, so I'm sure that would be worked in somewhere. My second one is going to be, maybe going a step away from that seriousness of Captain Atom into more of the humor side of Plastic Man. So Plastic Man would be fun. We've seen that kind of stretchy power set way back with Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see that, I'm sure, before Plastic Man would ever make his appearance in a movie with the new Fantastic Four coming out. But so I think it could be done. But the cool thing about Plastic Man, or at least the more unique thing, is he's usually stretching in a little bit more animated ways where
Right.
instead of Mr. Fantastic just reaching his arm out, Plastic Man is going to turn his arm into a fly swatter or like a mallet or something like that. He's going to like turn his whole body into a shield. I
Parachute.
think that, yeah, a parachute, a balloon,
Hang
all that
glider.
stuff. Right.
Yeah.
So if we could see that in
Yeah.
movies somehow, I think that would be great. And like you said, like pair him up with Batman or The Question, just somebody super
I'd
serious,
love
and
a
then
Question Plastic Man team up.
right.
That'd be great.
So, and I think they've kind of made, I can't remember if it was like in the Injustice show or like the animated movie or the comics or something, but they were like, oh, he's one of the only characters that could take on Superman. That's kind of like, man, I don't know about that. We don't need to
Yeah.
like OP
Go
him
that
like
far.
that. But I think, don't just use him as like the throwaway comedian. Keep him
Mm-hmm.
like, he could still do some serious damage if he needs to, but he's usually going to have that smile on his face.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he'd add some humor and then also, again, some, like you said, the visual part of it would be really cool to see, like just how he'd fit into, and yeah, you could build up like the comedy part, but then you'd also be able to build in some of those more like heartfelt, serious moments or whatever
Yeah.
that might be. And
I think those serious moments hit harder with a funny character like that. Like if
right.
Plastic Man gets serious, you're like, oh, like this
Ooh,
is serious.
right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think Plastic Man would be sweet. I love Plastic Man and the Question. I keep thinking about
Yeah.
that as a team up. So glad you
And I
mentioned that.
think these both, like a lot of the, like, I think all four of these really are kind of more, and you could make them more realistic or whatever, but I think the DC could do a little bit more comic booky looking movies, and that could be something really unique rather than just trying to copy the MCU where everybody in the MCU looks like, they could be like an actual hero in today's
Right.
society. But like Plastic Man, nothing like Plastic Man is in the MCU right now.
Yeah.
So it'd just be something totally different, super fun.
I agree. So those are our picks for who we think needs to show up and who needs to sit out in the DCU. Let us know in the comments, as always, what you think. Who do you think's got to be in the DCU? Who needs to sit out? You can go ahead and hop back and check out some of our other videos. We've got the Tale of Two Batmans, which has a very handsome solo episode by this guy talking about different versions of Batman in the DC world. You can check out also the Batman Bad Guys ranking and check out what we thought about Batman's bad guys. Do some ranking of your own. So please be liking, sharing, and subscribing. And until next time, as always, stay strong.